From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
And welcome to
From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
And welcome to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Todd Connor in for Rafael Sanchez. Indiana faces the problem of creating a new statewide test for our public schools, or else we could lose millions of dollars in federal funding. School Superintendent Glenda Ritz made the announcement this week that state officials must maintain their waiver from the federal No Child Left Behind Act. We could lose it because Indiana left the National Common Core standards. Joining us now is one of the members of the State Board of Education, Dan Elsner, who currently serves as the president of Marian University in Indianapolis. And Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Todd.
So we have an issue that the federal government says they need that test in place, what, a year earlier than what you originally expected?
Not really. Interesting the way it was portrayed, because frankly it's not the way it is. Just even in December of 13, in 2012 for the waiver, we said we would make sure we had college and career standards, because it's very important to Hoosier students. And we committed not only to ourselves but the federal government, because the waiver gives you a lot of flexibility how you spend federal money. It's really good for our schools and our teachers in the state. Superintendents expect us to keep this waiver. And so we had that commitment. In December, we reaffirmed the waiver, that we were going to stay with this commitment to have college and career standards and test questions, higher order test questions. In April, the superintendent asked us to delay the testing of some of these new questions from May to next August and September, and the board said okay. So we've always really planned on it, and interestingly, of course, this doesn't surprise me, Hoosier educators, we have a record number of teachers who have committed to help rewrite some of the questions and work on piloting some of the questions. So education is so important to us, Todd, and this new level of commitment to college career standards, which Governor Pence has been a good leader on, is so important. We can't take a year off, and we've been expecting this. Hoosier educators have worked in developing the standards. They're committed to help writing questions to the standards. We're not taking a year off. We're going to make sure the students are learning the standards proficiency. That's what educators do, and so we think we'll be ready. That's our commitment. It's our commitment to Hoosier children and their parents. It's our commitment to the federal government.
Glenda Ritz would like to take a year off and not using those grades from the tests to grade schools and rate teachers, though, right?
Yeah, but we think the state board, and I know the governor agrees, education is too important. You don't take a year off and say, well, we won't keep score this year. We'll just take a year off.
But first time you do anything, whether it be a new test, I mean, there were some problems. There's some growing pains, right?
I think, Todd, there's a mischaracterization here. This ISTEP, we've been taking it a while.
Right.
There will be some new questions on it.
Right, but you're changing it.
Yes, but again, we've been taking ISTEP. In 2012, we were moving to college career standards. Educators wrote the standards. Every year, educators sit down with a curriculum and say, what are the learning objectives? Let's teach the proficiency. Let's test along the way and make sure they're learning the proficiency. So it's really not a radical change at all. Matter of fact, it's a refinement. And that's what educators do. They teach to standards with refined curriculum. So frankly, we've been not only talking about this, we've been committed to it. The department's been committed to it. The department reported at the last meeting, matter of fact, we have a record number of teachers interested in helping with the transition. No, I think our educators really, and I think it's incumbent on all leaders of the state.
Well, so why do you think Superintendent Ritz insists that it not happen?
I'm not sure about that. I see a pattern of not wanting to be accountable for student learning. And you know, it's too important, and I see our educators are fine with it. I think it's incumbent on every leader in the state, every parent, business leader, educator, and I see the educators are frankly ready for it because they wrote these and they want to do it. It's too important to the children. It's too important to their parents and the future of our state to take a year off accountability for student learning. We knew this was coming. We called for it.
Right.
We didn't just do it because the federal government thought it was important. We knew it's important for our children, and we've been working at this. So it's really, out of the blue, frankly, that we would suddenly say, well, my goodness, this is new. We don't know what to do. We do know what to do. We know what we need to do. Professional educators see the hill. They will take the hill, and our children will be taught to proficiency, and I think we'll test very well on it.
In the 30 seconds we have left, if there are large discrepancies in the test scores for next year on this new test, would you reconsider?
Well, all educators, when you give a test, if you look at the curve and say, boy, something's amiss here. But it's incumbent on leadership to take, when you take on the challenge of teaching to new standards and higher standards, the first thing you say is, let's go get it done.
Right.
You don't say right away, hey, this score won't probably go well, let's don't count. No. Good leaders step forward and say, I know you're great educators, I know our students, I know our superintendents, we're going to move forward because it's so important to our students to be ready for college and for careers. We're not going to teach it, we're going to be accountable for teaching it. If something goes right, sure, you can always look, but we made that commitment to our state. We made that commitment to our children. We made a commitment to leaders in this state, and we need to move forward. The educators are ready to do it. And all leaders of goodwill that see the future and the importance of education will move forward together and do this.
All right, Dan Elsner, thanks for coming in and talking to us.
It's good to be with you. Good
too.
questions.
Thank you. All right, after the break, we're continuing our conversation on standardized testing with our political insiders. Plus, we're talking state party conventions and cricket when Indianapolis This Week continues. Statewide testing in your child's school could see big changes starting in the next school year. School Superintendent Glenda Ritz says Indiana must establish a new ISTEP test a year earlier than planned if the state wants to maintain its waiver from the federal No Child Left Behind Act. Ritz told state officials that the request comes straight from the U.S. Department of Education. Ritz says the new test is required because of the state's formal exit from the National Common Core standards. Now, if the state loses its waiver, it could lose control over millions in federal dollars. Joining us now are two of our political insiders, IndyPolitics.org editor Abdul Hakim Shabazz and Democrat Laura Beck. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Todd.
So what's the problem? Why can't we just do what Glenda says? She doesn't want the test scores to be used to evaluate teachers or determine school grades.
Well, it's just a consistent pattern by the superintendent to avoid any and all accountability. Glenda doesn't like accountability. The teachers' unions don't like accountability. So anything that they can do to push back on accountability, they will. The fact that Indiana may lose its No Child Left Behind waiver is all about the superintendent not taking the time that she had last year to put the system in place so we could have the accountability standards so we would be fine. They don't need a new ISTEP test. This is all about delaying accountability.
Does this rest on her shoulders?
And thus you have the talking points. Republican Party right here. We still haven't recovered from our Lord and Savior Tony Bennett losing the election, unfortunately. I think that as we constantly say with education, it is constantly a moving target. There's a lot of different things going on, but as the Republicans like to do, they like to put the blame square on Superintendent Ritz, and that's not the case here. We have opted out of Common Core, so we're going to have issues with that. Number one, but at the same time, I think that what Abdul is not talking about is that even at the State Board of Education meeting, one of her strongest detractors even said, this isn't about the board versus the department. This is about doing the right thing for kids. So I think we're going to see resolution on it, and I think we will get there. What I find even more concerning, though, is even beyond this, is just that there is this constant effort, because she won and Tony Bennett did not, to try to not recognize her or her department for the expertise they have. I mean, take in point the pre-K program, which is being delayed, and FSSA is implementing it. And FSSA is there. Just don't interrupt. There's a group of really hardworking folks there, but why are they the ones implementing it? Why aren't we working with the Department of Education? Wouldn't that make sense? They're not working together. I mean, why aren't we doing that?
Trust me, for an educator, I found that Glenda Ritz and her friends, if we get that little part of kindergarten, like your son, do they work well and play well with others?
Oh my gosh, you people picked up your ball and went home.
She would probably not score very well in that department.
My child scores very well.
I know, exactly. And actually, Taggart is probably more mature than half the folks.
He doesn't take after his mother, that's for sure.
I mean, the thing is really simple. When Glenda took over, she won the election fair and square.
The state superintendent. Her name is. She is the state superintendent.
When Glenda won,
she's not Glenda.
And Glenda won in 2013. 2012. They had a system in place. We already had approval, had everything. Here's the accountability. They dropped the ball. Now they never won accountability from day one, and now we're reaping the benefits, the curse of it.
Just one thing here.
Before we move on.
Before we move on, I was at the state JJ dinner for the Democrat Party JJ dinner, where we had
Jefferson
11.
Jackson.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. 1,100 people in attendance. attendance, and when she stood up to talk, she was very well received. And one of my friends who's running a statewide campaign was sitting with me and turned to me and said, they love her. They love her out there. When she is out on the road, when she's out on the stump, when she's out in schools, people love her. So when you're looking at the Indianapolis media market, where we just like to keep the churn going, those folks aren't paying attention to that. They're paying attention to the media. No, I'm not blaming it on the media. Not at all, because I love the media, and I love you, Todd.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Not so sure about Raphael.
Conventions? Well, Raphael, he's a whole other story.
Oh, well,
the Democratic Party convention last weekend. The Republicans are meeting this weekend. Your thoughts after the Democratic convention? A lot of momentum, do you feel, coming out? I mean, what's the read on?
Well, I do, and I almost feel like we need to let Abdul talk first about the family feud going on in the Republican side, and then I can follow up with how wonderful we're doing.
All right.
Well, somebody who makes the point to be at both conventions. What I can tell you about, I thought it was interesting with the Democrats. You know, they didn't have any fights, so they were united. However, I do think there was a certain delusional atmosphere in the Democrats. They're also at the same time as Indy PopCon, which is the fantasy convention. I thought in one room there were people who were playing dress up, living in Fantasyland. Another room they were selling comic books.
Do you write your own jokes?
Oh, of course, write my own jokes.
He's been working on that one for a while.
I know.
No, the problem for the Republicans is, will they be able to come out of their convention united and put together? Because there are a significant portion of Republicans, a lot of folks live in urban areas like Marion County and the Donut Counties, who want nothing to do with that marriage fight, that marriage matter. They think it's a divided issue and it's a losing issue. But there's some folks like Eric Miller and Micah Clark who just can't get it through their thick skulls that this is not what Hoosiers want.
Right. So a battle leading up to it, and maybe a battle leading
maybe a battle coming out of it. Yeah.
I think that what you see is the Democrats. We had 1,100 people at our JJ dinner at a time where we don't have the governor's office, and there are both supermajorities in the House and Senate. And I think that says a lot about the energy and the unity around our party.
And the fact that there are other Democrats in the state, so this is the only place where they can actually see some.
I'm just ignoring you. The other thing, though, I will say too about our convention is we did pass a historic marriage equality plank to our platform, and it is in striking contrast to what's happening with Republicans. I mean, you've got folks on the Republican side who are threatening walkouts. So we're coming out of this united, and as we all learned from Murdoch Lugar, a fight like this costs you in the long run. So
all right.
We'll see.
One last topic we want to touch on. It's a strikeout for cricket in Indianapolis, as you all know, if that's, I guess, the right phrase to use in cricket. Plans are being dropped for the National Cricket Championship in Indy in August. Mayor Ballard says the decision was made because of lack of a communication. The Cricket Association is blaming Indy for a lack of funding to help offset the costs of the competition. So, after spending millions of dollars on the new fields, is this a black eye for Mayor Ballard? Is he making the right move by going ahead and putting the distance between them now, or is it just egg all over his face no matter what?
Well, I think cricket is sort of emblematic of the misplaced priorities conversation that you've been hearing. I mean, there was $6 million in Rebuild Indy funds that could have gone to a lot of other things, and they didn't. Is Indianapolis a place where we could have cricket someday? Perhaps, but with all the other issues we have out there, I think that that money could have been spent elsewhere.
But if it's going to make money, isn't it a good thing?
Well, the only thing, though, is that this cricket operation appeared to be somewhat of a fly-by-night group, and it took a long time for the city to get to a point where they severed ties, and, you know, doing the 4 p.m. Friday news dump is always, I think, effective for them. But at the same time, the fact that they're fighting back, saying the city couldn't get sponsorships, they didn't put in lighting. There's a lot of little league fields around the city that could probably use lighting, let alone a cricket field that we may not even sure if gets used.
A couple of things. First of all, as much as my Democratic friends would love to say it's a cricket field, it is not a cricket field.
Are there benches?
There are more fields.
Are there benches?
It is for soccer. It is for a ton of sports.
Gaelic football.
Which actually Indianapolis actually did very well in hosting, and actually did quite well most recently.
That's good.
It is a rebuild. Indy has been to rebuild the infrastructure. Parks, as my Democratic friends say, we don't spend enough money on parks. You're now putting parks in a place where there is nothing but weeds. And for my Democratic friends to say misplaced priorities, they would know, seeing how they gave the mayor grief for not pursuing the Democratic National Convention in 2016 and spending $50 million and some change. So
this is a real stretch here.
And if we really want to talk about, you know, the much that we spend on crime and misplaced priorities, how about we have a prosecutor who actually files charges when people are caught with guns and weapons and that whole thing.
That is going to have to wait for the next show.
That is actually, but I think at the end of the day, it's just emblematic of a larger problem, and it's unfortunate. I mean, the other part is too is that, you know, you got people who live in those neighborhoods who had major damages to their wells, so you had to pay more money there. So
that's got to go for another show as well.
It sure is.
Thank you for talking to us. And if you want to talk to these two, of course, the conversation between our insiders continues on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion. Stay up with Kip, Abdul, Laura, and Jennifer all throughout the week. All right, and the violence across Indianapolis this year is being felt by a lot of people in our community, especially those who wear a badge. Now, the Fraternal Order of Police is moving forward with a new support program. We're talking about that after the break. Officers put everything on the line, sometimes dealing with violent criminals to protect us. So who's there for them? The Fraternal Order of Police Local 86 is establishing a new program called Code 3 at FOP. The goal is to give officers the spiritual support that they want. Joining us now is the Vice President of the FOP Local 86, Rick Snyder. Thank you very much, Rick, for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
I guess, first of all, just tell the people out there, what is a Code 3?
Well, a Code 3 actually comes from a police code that's used on the radio that an officer used to signify the time that they take to take a break. And we incorporated that into the name of our program because we really thought that it symbolized our goal, which was to allow officers to come to our FOP and take a spiritual break, if you will.
Which type of officers might need something like this?
All of our officers. What we have come to the realization of is this. Our police academies do a very good job of training our officers how to survive physically, and we're proud of that.
Right.
However, there's very little done that helps our officers learn how to survive in life spiritually, especially in the role of a police officer. And what we have found, and we see time and time again, is that when our officers don't take care of that area of their life, the core of their life, they really lose track of who they are and forget that they're a human being first and foremost.
So when you say spiritually, you know, many people think religion. So
Sure.
are they going to be coming there? Is there going to be some praying going on? Is there going to be a service of any sort? I mean, what are we getting at?
It really isn't a religious approach. It's more of digging to the spirit of the human element and really the heart of our officers. Unfortunately, with the type of work that our officers do, they are in a constant state of hypervigilance and always on guard. And so they tend to shelter that component of their being and really kind of hide it away. And they sometimes struggle with, after many years of being in that state of crisis day to day in their jobs, they forget to let themselves take a break and recalibrate themselves at the spiritual level.
In the 45 seconds or so that we have left, an officer who comes into this might go one-on-one with a counselor of some sort?
Yeah, it's a very informal setting. It's more like a coffee group, and we do have a faith-based leader who comes in and facilitates a discussion specifically dealing with the challenges of police work. And what we find, many people forget, is that on average, the suicide rate in the law enforcement profession is 3 times higher than the number of officers killed in the line of duty every year.
Sounds similar to the recent numbers coming out of the military as well.
Absolutely, and the thing that is different here is that here in Indianapolis, this FOP, we're doing something about it.
All right. Well, congratulations and good luck with that, Rick Snyder.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and talking to us about the program.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. The United Way of Central Indiana is beginning a new commitment to community issues, and they're calling it the New You. More after the break.
Good morning, I'm Beth Vaughn. Here's what we're working on right now at RTV6. We have a stat update to a story we've been following since Wednesday. We now know the gas station clerk shot in the head during a robbery has died. The family of 45-year-old Harry Briggs has decided to donate his organs. Briggs was shot at the Kick 66 station near West Troy Avenue and South Lyndhurst Drive. Surveillance video shows Briggs was trying to comply when the robber demanded money but was still shot. Today is another big day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as hundreds of vintage race cars will take to the oval as well as the road course for some very special races. The first annual Brickyard Vintage Racing Invitational wraps up today with a series of races. Over 400 classic race cars will be on hand. Tickets are $25, but kids under 12 get in for free. Stay up to date throughout the day on latest breaking news on the RTV6 app.
Here at RTV6, we've put a special focus on our community conversation in the wake of increased violence and homicides in our city this year. The United Way of Central Indiana is also putting a new focus on community issues with a commitment called the New You. And here to explain more about what this means is the president and CEO of the United Way of Central Indiana, Ann Mertlow. Ann, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I guess, first of all, let's just start off with what really is the new you?
Well, it's a new way of thinking about the work that we do and totally aligning all of our resources, which are huge in United Way, to really move the needle on some big community issues in the area of education, income, health, and basic needs. Those are our 4 priority areas. So we have been around for 100 years, and we were originally formed as a war chest and then as a community chest. So we raised money and we gave it away to various agencies. Now our value proposition is very different. We think about our work as being along a pathway to self-sufficiency, where it starts at the birth of an individual and goes to their ultimate success as an adult, where success is defined as self-sufficiency to the greatest extent possible. We do 3 things. We support a strong network of human services agencies through unrestricted funding, and we hold those agencies to high standards. The second thing we do is connect the dots between those agencies and others working in the human services sector to create the critical mass of services that individuals need to be able to think about the long term and improve their position over the long term. And then the third thing is that we keep a bird's eye view on that entire landscape so that we can identify big gaps and weaknesses and strategically invest community resources in those areas. Now we're really focused on big community goals, things like in education, improving the high school graduation rate over the next 10 years, improving 3rd grade literacy over the next 10 years, and improving the number of quality child care facilities that are available, particularly to low-income children, so that they can start kindergarten ready. In health, childhood obesity is at almost epidemic proportions, so we want to see that really change over the next 10 years.
We have about 30 seconds left. Does it mean what you've done in the past hasn't worked, or it's just you see this working better?
You know, I think this will work better, and we saw it work better in quality child care. So when we really brought all our resources to bear, we saw real movement in the indicators over a very short period of time. And if we can bring our partners, our programs, our agencies, and our funding really to bear around those specific community indicators, I think we'll make some great progress.
All right, Ann Mertlow, good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Finally today, Indiana Senator Dan Coats is welcoming a new member to his family this week. The senator tweeted out this picture on Wednesday of himself and his wife with their newest granddaughter, Maggie Sloan Coats. We want to congratulate the Coats family as they welcome their newest member. And that is it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Todd Connor, and have a great Sunday.